Hi everybody, it's Sweetsa here at Emanate. So today we're gonna talk about another topic to get us thinking about our thinking. So we live in a world where we kind of want what we want to be heard, to be listened to, and a lot of the times what we don't realize is we're going through life prompting, pushing, and prodding. And maybe even a little coercion. We can actually do that to other people. We can excessively prompt them, excessively push them, excessively prod them. So what it basically sounds like, right? Get up, get your shoes, don't forget your lunch. Did you do this? Did you do your homework? Did you get what you needed? Did I grab my purse? Where is your sweatshirt? And this happens a lot in the classroom, right? Timmy, stop talking to Tommy. Sabrina, go turn in your homework. So we're seeking compliance, but we don't realize that that compliance or that sought out compliance is actually, it's a form of control, but a lot of the times we look at someone's behavior that's close to us. So it could be a student in the classroom, or it could be your own child, or it could be yourself. And it's forming that thought bubble is that if it's done this way, then I'm adequate, then what I'm doing is right. There's a great quote out there from Brad Blanton. He has a book called Radical Honesty. He said, "We suffer a great deal trying to make the world match our thinking." So ultimately, we really want things done the way that we would do them, or the way that we see them. Not just in the outcome, but also sometimes in the process. So continuous prompting, prodding, and pushing actually results in 3 different ways of resistance. So doing this actually causes repercussions of different behaviors, and we just don't typically realize it. So there's 2 different ways I want you to look at this. So as a kid, if you were prompted or pushed, I want you to think about the ways you resisted or the behavior that you exhibited. And then the other side of the coin is, I really want you to think about is how you respond now to a prompt, push, or prod as an adult. So let's begin. So one way to resist is being obedient or compliant. So when you're a child, you obey without question, and really as an adult. So if there's an authority that says, I need you to do this, you really just do it without any question, and raising any concern, and you really end up structuring your life in a way, you end up fixing it in a way that someone can tell you what to do. So really you have no sense of autonomy, and in fact your anxiety rises and conflict rises when, right, you're faced where you have to make a decision. Fear for you is really just not getting it right. So it's a form of resistance. So number 2 is really pushback. So if you're in a classroom and you give a prompt or prod a student to say, I need you to get your homework, or I need you to go downstairs to hand this in to a teacher. This particular student might actually talk back to you. They might refuse to do what you're asking, or they might say, why do I need to do that? And this person may actually resist until they no longer can, right? So if you're an adult and you're somebody who resists when somebody prompts them, pushes them, wants them to do something in a way of compliance, the only way that will typically happen is if there's a level of authority that you can't push through and you need that. So if you need your job, you're gonna ultimately do what your boss says. But there will be an internal struggle of wanting to push back. The sad part about this one, just like in number 1 where we talked about that person having anxiety, in this particular case, sometimes the resistance and the defiance come out when it's really unnecessary. But it's such a conditioned response that most people don't know how else to do it. And it actually keeps you at an arm's length from people and pretty disconnected. And the third one is passive. So when someone is, again, pushed and prodded and prompted for compliance, in this response, a person might say, yeah, I'm coming. And then 10 minutes later, they're still doing the same thing they were when you called them. They're perhaps the folks that are daydreaming, that are maybe in a land of unicorns and chocolate waterfalls. And these are the folks that typically are bigger procrastinators than the other two. So in this particular one, I want to point out how you can actually do this to yourself, how that same behavior that you use as a child can actually contribute to adulthood. So if you were a child who responded to prompting or continuous pushing in a passive way, fast forward to adulthood, if you say to yourself, just that internal dialogue that says, I got to get this done, you have to finish this, you got to go talk to this person, you actually may respond in the same way, passively. So on all those things that you mentioned internally to yourself, you might actually just procrastinate, daydream, and never get it done. So whatever you experienced when you were younger, you actually, when you do it to yourself now, you will have those same pockets of resistance. So we're really acting out our conditioning. So there's another really great quote by Blanton, but it's super long, so I'm gonna have to read it, but it's really good. In our adult lives, the child of the past is constantly trying to make us live as we lived at home in childhood. Due to this influence, we keep twisting our present circumstances and relationships to resemble those we knew in the past. It's pretty powerful. So the question becomes, how do you ultimately start to work on this? So number one is I would really notice. I would start to notice my behavior under the lens of prompting, pushing, and prodding. And this is not something I would do every day and really make my life mechanical. I would sometimes even pick an hour or pick a half a day that you want to actually bring yourself to a higher level of consciousness and self-awareness to notice when and if you do these behaviors that are ultimately getting in your way. And number two, I would make a list. I would make a list of what you're commanding others to do and really what happens to you when they don't do them. How do you actually feel when someone isn't compliant with what you're asking them to do? And get very curious about that. And the other list I would make are what are the things that you're commanding yourself to do? And how do you respond to yourself? And how do you feel when you don't get the things that you wanted for yourself done? So noticing and making a list and getting curious is really a way to continue to think about your thinking. So we don't actually live a life that we're conditioned to live, but actually living a life of connection and freedom. So I hope that helps. Until next time, emanate your best self.